Hello and welcome to this video presentation. My name is Paul Brett. I'm a Senior Software Support Analyst supporting the Transformation Extender product from IBM. The topic for this video is multiple users accessing Design Studio. Feel free to reach out to me on popular social media channels at Paul Brett IBM. In this practical demonstration, I will show how multiple workstations, in this case two, will have a dummy workspace on each machine. No projects will actually exist under this dummy workspace. Each workstation will also have access to a shared file space. I have mapped this as the W drive, but I will also show it using a UNC reference. Projects will be added to this workspace with a non-default location. Let's start this practical demonstration on my workstation where I have remote control of two virtual machines. On the left we have a machine called VM16X-ITX, which I shall refer to as machine 1 and is being used by a user who I shall call user 1. On the right we have VM16X-ITX2, which I shall refer to as machine 2 and is being used by a user called user 2. On both machines you will see that I have a shortcut on the desktop to a local workspace. This is the default workspace created in the user's profile directory on the C drive. They are completely separate areas and a folder created in one will not appear on the second machine because they are completely separate. Okay. Both machines also have a shared workspace, which in my case is a W drive which has been mapped to a remote server called NAS, a shared folder called Workspace. Here you will note that if I create a folder on one machine, it automatically appears on the second machine because it is a shared workspace. And if I delete it from the second machine, you will note that it disappears from the first machine. Moving on to the Design Studio, we have the default workspace and we currently have no projects. On machine 1, if I create a new extender project and call this project 1, we'll leave the default location in and click finish and then move the Design Studio out of the way, show the local workspace again, and you will note we have a folder called project 1. On machine 2, let's move the Design Studio out of the way for the moment and show that there's nothing in the local workspace. On machine 2, I'm going to create a new project called project 2. I'm going to leave the default location box ticked, click finish, and you'll note that in the workspace folder there is now a project 2 folder, but back on machine 1, project 2 does not exist. So at the moment user 1 can work on project 1 and user 2 can work on project 2 only. There's no cross-working at all allowed. Okay, so this isn't ideal. What's the solution? On machine number 1, I'm going to remove project 1 temporarily. I'm going to delete the contents on disk and the project is gone, and you will note that there is now no project 1. I'm going to recreate project 1, but this time instead of using the default location, I'm going to use a share drive W project 1. This is the folder that the whole project is going to sit in. Okay, if we look at our local workspace, you will note that project 1 does not exist, but if we go into the shared folder, you will note that there is a project 1 folder there now. On machine number 2, let's right click and choose new extender project. We're going to put in a reference project 1. It's got to be exactly the same name as the user 1 used. I'm going to untick use default location, and I've got to use exactly the same location here as well, w:/project 1. Okay, so now you will note that I have a project 1 in my shared workspace. I still don't have a project 1, but in the shared workspace I do have a project 1. And it's the same project 1. And I will prove this by going into the Design Studio on Users 1 workstation and creating a type tree. We'll save that type tree and close. In the shared workspace area, you will note that there is a generic.mtt has appeared. And on the project, on the Design Studio, on user 2, if we refresh project 1, you will note that the type tree appears here as well. Okay, so user 2 has access to project 1, as does user 1. But project 2 is still accessible only by user 2, so we need to delete and recreate that. But let's assume that project 2 is an ongoing project and it's something where we've already started some work. So I'm going to create a new type tree in project 2 just to simulate that. Ongoing in project 2. Okay, so we have a type tree. So we don't want to delete the contents of the project because that may have hundreds of files in it. What we'll do is we'll temporarily delete the project but not delete the project contents. We'll move to the local workspace area and go into the project. And you will note that we've got the file, one single one here that could represent multiple files. We're going to put that into the shared area instead. So let's recreate project 2 in the shared area. New extender project, project 2, non-default location, w:/project 2, finish. You will note that this is empty, there are no type trees. But what we're going to do, in the shared workspace area, we've got a folder called project 2 now. We're just going to move all of the files from the local workspace to the shared workspace. There are 2 files we must not move because these are part of the Eclipse underlying project structure, which is any file that ends with .dtx deployment and any file that ends with .project. So this only leaves our one type tree. So we shall click and drag and drop that into the shared area instead. So it's now gone from this area. We can now completely remove the project 2 folder because it's now defunct from the local workspace. And in the shared workspace we've got ongoing. If we refresh the project in our Design Studio for user 2, the type tree appears, ongoing. And for user 1, if we create the reference to the project, new extend project, project 2, put in the shared reference, project 2, and expand, you will note that this also has access to the ongoing.mtt. Now ideally, each user would only be accessing a project at a time. So for example, if user 1 was working on project 1, but not working on project 2, he would right click and close the project so that he couldn't accidentally lock objects. And if user 2 was working on project 2, he would perhaps right click on project 1 and choose close project. However, if they come in one day and decide to work on each other's projects, user 1 says, oh, I'll do some of that stuff you wanted me to do on project 2, and user 2 says, oh yep, I'll continue the design of the maps on project 1 for you. Basically, user 1 just chooses to close project 1 and open project 2, and user 2 chooses to close project 2 and open project 1. And then they can carry on working completely autonomously but on separate projects. I would like to show that this also works for UNC instead of just mapped drives. So I'm going to create a project 3 now on both machines. If we choose new extender project and go for project 3, untick the use default location, and instead of using the W drive, I'm going to use a UNC reference, which is double backslash, then the name of the server, then a single backslash, and then the name of the share, which is workspace. Then another backslash, then the name of the project, project 3. Over on user 2's machine, I'm going to do the same, new extender project. And now if I was to create a new object in project 3 here, let's create a new type tree. Call this type tree UNC stuff. In project 3, click finish. You will note that I've got a type tree here called UNC stuff, and over in user 1's machine, if I refresh project 3, the type tree UNC stuff appears. So there's the same thing done with a UNC reference instead of a mapped drive. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my video presentation today. If you found the content interesting and informative, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel as I release content such as this on a regular basis. Feel free to reach out to me on popular social media channels at Paul Brett IBM. Thank you.